Good evening. I would like to call to order the September 9th, 2024 Lake Washington School Board meeting. Let the record reflect that all school board members are present and accounted for. We also have 2 of our student representatives with us this evening. The board values public participation and engagement in the meetings of the board. Board meetings will continue to be live streamed on the LWSD website and are available for viewing following the conclusion of the board meeting as well. The public are always welcome to email the board at boardmembers@lwsd.org. Director LaLiberty, will you please read our land acknowledgement this evening?
Yes. The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District acknowledges that our district is on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples, who have reserved treaty rights on this land, including the Duwamish and the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived here since time immemorial. We commit to continue collaborating with our Native community to teach the indigenous history of this land and these local tribes to all children of the district. We also commit to provide the best possible education for all children of Native descent who attend our schools.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion to approve the September 9th, 2024 agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Guthrie to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The next item on our agenda is a recognition. Dr. Holman.
Yes, tonight we have our team of directors that each and every day support our schools to support families, support students, support staff in the operations and leadership of the school. And annually, we've asked this team to come and provide an opening school report. And so Deputy Superintendent Beebe will introduce the team and get us started.
Normally Dale Cody does this, but he is with his son in Montana. So he asked me to do an introduction, and I'm going to keep it really brief. This is our intrepid level director team, as we call them. Dr. Matt Livingston, Dr. Whitney Meisner. I almost said Holly. Heidi Paul, it was a joke from bargaining. Yeah, Heidi Paul, Sandy Dennehy, and Steph Clark. They're going to share a little bit of sort of the excitement of the beginning of a new school year, but also the work that they're doing with schools to sort of advance the board goals and board agenda as we move into a new school year. So excited to hear what they have to say, and I'm just going to turn it over to Steph.
Thank you, Scott Beebe. Thanks for having us, everyone. And Scott kind of took my first slide's thunder, but again, just the level directors are here. And today we're here to talk about our region's opening, as well as some of the key work we've been doing with leaders and teachers the last couple of years. So we'll be directly focusing on the new student growth goals that are being implemented statewide. And we'll be talking about our principal PLCs using the cycle of inquiry as some of our work. I am the proud director of the Region West, we like to call us. Sometimes we use West Side Story as a theme, but there's 10 schools there. 7 of them feed into the Juanita Elementary High School, and 3 feed into Kirk Middle and Lake Washington High School. So there are 10 amazing schools, and all of them had great starts. As you can see, this is some first day pics at John Muir Elementary. We've got some students. I got there at 7:55 a.m. and those four beautiful children up there were waiting for school to open. They were so excited for the first day of school at John Muir. Down below are our IAs at Thoreau Elementary, and they were getting ready for their first recess rodeo. What's a recess rodeo? A recess rodeo is where they really get to know the kids, all of the kids, because they're responsible for them at recess, and help them adjust to the expectations during recess and make sure that kids have a safe, fun, and active place to play and learn and grow. Several of the directors were at Lakeside, who have welcomed over 600 students this year, and everyone seemed to be wearing a lot of leopards for the Lakeview. Did I call them Lakeside? I'm sorry, Lakeview Leopards. Our PTAs were present in all buildings, providing first day of school picture opportunities and coffee and some tissues for some kids that needed them as well. And Director Guthrie and I were there the first day of Kindy on Friday at Bell Elementary, and they were super excited, very serious. They could already stand in a line because of some of the things they learned at Jumpstart at Bell Elementary, because they do a little preview, 2-day preview at Bell. And Principal Story and his staff greeted them with the Friday song, which is, I Think We're Going to Be Friends. So, and then I got a couple tears as they walked in as well. But it was a really, really successful start at all of our schools. I'm really proud of all the work that our principals do, all those little details. Start in the spring to make the first days of school very successful. As I said, as we are also going to talk about some of the work and how it may have played out these last couple weeks of school. But before we jump into the critical attributes, and it jumped in without me touching it, I just wanted to talk about OSPI a few years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, started to do interest surveys of teachers about the student growth goals. So these were revised carefully by a committee through OSPI with feedback from teachers and teacher leaders on what needed to make these more meaningful, more authentic, more flexible to really help students, teachers grow in their practice. And the 4 things that shifts you'll see in the student growth goals, I don't know if you'll see them, but things that we're working on with our teachers and our leaders is being more culturally responsive and culturally responsive instruction. It's something we've been talking about for a long time, but now we'll see those in the goals. Family engagement and voice, student ownership, student experience, and student voice, and really focusing on strengths and asset-based learning. And then teacher reflection on what their students are learning. So those are the really important shifts that OSPI has created. And as I said, this is a statewide move to changes in the student growth goals. There are 6 critical attributes of the student growth goals, and Whitney, Sandy, and I will be talking about 2 and how they're kind of playing out the first week of school. So I'm going to be focusing on knowledge of students and the essential standard. Knowledge of students has always been a part of the student growth goals, but those were created, I think, in 2011. Don't quote me on that. But they were a little bit deficit-based rather than strengths-based. We're really focusing on strengths-based, assets-based on students, not looking for all the things that they do wrong or all the things that need to be fixed. We had a real inspirational speaker during DLT Week, Christian Page, who talked about strengths-based, not being, I was a student who everyone categorized as in a deficit way rather than as a scholar. I was so they were really inspired by his spoken word poem, Trees, as well as being a leader, but really understanding why it's important to know students and know their cultural identity, their academic and social and emotional assets. We're also looking at anecdotal data rather than just ESPA data or FastBridge data, and Dr. Livingston is going to talk about street data, but looking at data that's more maybe interview-based or based on what students and families tell us. Here's, so during DLT Week, early August, and even last spring, we were working on unpacking these new student growth goals with teachers and leaders. And then in August, we worked on it with a teacher, leader, and principal. And then during LEAP Week, principals and teacher leaders help lead their staff in unpacking the critical attributes, being knowledge of students. So this is a poster paper that one of the schools made. And it was really like, what do we already do? We already do a lot of things that get to know students. And then what are some new things that we might bring and leverage to the table? And this is a wonderful teacher, 3rd grade teacher at Thoreau Elementary, who had just a nice activity with a read aloud, and he was really getting to know the strengths and the likes and the interests and the background of his students. You can see their hands were raised. I kind of cut off that picture. But it was really fun to watch all the different ways teachers and and leaders were getting to know students. The other thing is the first 3 days of school, we're so lucky to have these 3 half-days in the elementary, and I want to make sure this is only happening in elementary, where they get to meet with every family. And we worked with our principals to really think about how can we leverage that to really get to know our students' strengths and our assets and their background and culture. So we designed some questions. They used their leap time to really prepare for these, and hopefully they had a real meaningful conversation with families at the opening of the year and making that positive connection to start a school year. So I know it's hectic to do half days at the beginning of the year that way, but people are finding them really meaningful and really successful. And then I just wanted to show you, this is just a little snip of what it will look like on a rubric through the evaluation system. The teacher is just able to explain how the knowledge of individual students inform the goal and the goal they're working on, and then what are some of the data points and the knowledge of students, which could be gathered in a circle, it could be gathered on a one-on-one conversation, it could be gathered in a feedback session. I know my students really like this, so I designed the lesson to use this content to engage them more. So these are ways that we are trying to help our students grow. And the last slide I have is the essential standard, and I'm not going to talk that much about it because the essential standard has always been there. It's been part of our student growth goals. So still the student growth goals need to be a part of an essential standard, or if you're in high school, a national standard or a language standard. And it should be a significant learning that draws upon students' culture, identities, backgrounds, and demands some complex thinking. So those are 2 of the attributes that we're working on and developing with our teachers this year. And we just had a really wonderful start in the Western region. I'm going to hand it over to Sandy D.
Hello, everyone. Sandy Dennehy, Director of Elementary Education for the Central Region, which is the all the schools that feed into Redmond Middle School, as well as the schools that feed into Rose Hill Middle School. I also have an extended day program that I support, which is really exciting. We have currently 12 sites for extended day with over 500 students in the extended day program, 26 staff members, and we have had an opportunity to meet with all of the principals this year to really engage in collaboration. Within those 9 schools, I also am pleased to announce that we have 3 new administrators to our school district. The principal at Redmond Elementary, Ann Bourne-Cinthola, the principal at Rockwell, Adam Couch, and the associate principal at Mann and Rockwell, split between both, Brian Dyson. So exciting new changes in our system with new leaders. So the first day of school was, of course, exciting and joyous, and like just lots of change and enthusiasm. I got to actually go to every site last week, spend a pretty significant amount of time just talking to kids and teachers and parents, and the environment was just a buzz and contagious. It was exciting, and kids were just like bopping in. I got to be at Einstein with Mark and Lindsay last week, and I got to walk a student to her classroom, and I found out she was a kindergartner, but she told me she was in first grade. So there was that. She went to the right teacher. It was just that she thought she was going into first grade. So we cleared that up. It was all good. Another highlight would be just at Redmond Elementary. They changed really the whole way that they enter into the building. They welcomed them everyone into the gym at the beginning of the day. The students were really able to hear from their new principal, see who's in their class, talk about what it is to soar at Redmond. And I want to point out that picture right there in the corner with the teacher who's holding the flowers, she had just gotten married 2 days before the first day of school to another individual in our district, another teacher in our district. And I'm just telling you, that is the dedication of Lake Washington School District right there. And then just a few more pictures at Barton. Again, they do welcome in the gym. They have a morning meeting every day, and just a lot of smiling faces and lots of get-to-know-you activities. So I'm going to just talk briefly about two more of our critical attributes: cognitive and emotional engagement and formative and summative assessment. So cognitive and emotional engagement invites complex and higher order thinking from students. It invites students' attention to the learning through their interest and active engagement, active learning, and a sense of belonging, and supports students' ownership for their learning, making space for student voices and empowerment, as well as develops students' effort, persistence, and concentration. The picture to your left is actually a picture of students in our extended day program who were building structures out of toothpicks and marshmallows to see who could build the tallest structure and one that would withstand an earthquake or maybe just a table shake. But this is a great example of how to address cognitive and emotional engagement, experiential learning, inquiry-based, and also really fostering that sense of community as they were working together. Similarly, we have a wonderful new opportunity and connection with one of our with our K-5 social studies curriculum, Inquire Ed, which students will be engaged in an inquiry-based curriculum that nurtures both cognitive and emotional engagement by promoting active learning, problem solving, and autonomy, all of which can make, obviously, learning more exciting, engaging, and meaningful and motivating for our students. So the integrated engagement supports a deeper understanding and more enthusiastic students. And I don't know if you guys were social studies fans when you were in elementary school, but it's not just like looking at a map and finding the different states or memorizing different things, but it's really experiencing the authentic piece of our history. Formative and summative assessments, that's something we've heard about forever and has been part of our student growth for as long as we've had our student growth goals. But just want to point out that summative assessments, they may include performance assessments, project-based learning, and other opportunities to demonstrate the sum of a student's learning. As well as formative assessments provide information to teachers so they can actually adjust their instruction and so students can adjust their learning strategies. And with formative assessments, really the maximum benefit is when students receive feedback and productive support and interaction from their teachers, rather than just a score or a grade. And I am a parent in the Lake Washington School District, and just yesterday I received an amazing piece of paper. Actually, it was on the computer, and I printed it out, and it's too small to read. But the kids will be looking at it on the paper, and it is a syllabus put together by the 8th grade team at Finn Hill Middle School. And in this syllabus, they explicitly highlight the project-based assessments, the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, the ability to go back and show mastery through the learning that they had done after they had already taken an assessment. And this is, to me, how students learn. It is an opportunity to say, like, oh, maybe you didn't get it that time, but let's go back and try again, and to show mastery in a different way. And I will just say that I feel very lucky to have my child in a system where they benefit from the practice and the support of teachers, and teachers are making adjustments based on the needs of many of our learners in our schools. So pretty exciting stuff, and the student growth goals, we've been living and breathing them for a number of months, maybe a year now, and I am so excited about it, and I've seen principals, I've seen teachers make adjustments in the way they're talking about students, the way they are viewing teaching and learning, it's going to be a really exciting year of change. So thank you very much, and thank you for joining us on our first days of school as well.
Good to see everyone again. I'm Whitney Meisner, and I support the secondary schools in the East Region along with Wanik Skills Center. And Director Yoakum, you might recognize some of these pictures. I think you might have been standing right next to me when I was taking all of these. This first series are at Evergreen Middle School, and the outside is watching the kids get safely into the school, and you wouldn't believe how difficult it is sometimes in secondary parking lots, but boy, they've got it down. And then the second picture is talking to the sixth graders and their parents as they're waiting to get into the gym. And the third picture is all of them lined up to get in the gym. Evergreen Middle School, like several other middle schools, did a rolling start this year where the sixth graders came first for a few hours, got to meet their web leaders and get oriented to the school, and then the seventh and eighth graders came a little bit later. It was phenomenal in all the schools that I got to see that were doing that. In the middle picture there is when they got them all into their seats. On the left, that's Timberline Middle School, and the kids are already getting ready to go. The right picture is Inglewood when they were also doing their rolling start. So the sixth graders were meeting in small groups with their web leaders. It's very similar to Link Crew for middle school. And I also had a lot of fun taking pictures of the walls. Inglewood Middle School has a very middle school sense of humor. So I'll let you guess which one was from Inglewood. It's hard to read that bottom picture, but what it says is, imagine if we measured success by the amount of safety that people feel in our presence. And that came from Redmond Middle School. And the middle picture is from Wanik Skills Center, and it's marketing photos that kids do of their own programs. So one thing I wanted to share about feedback from students, since we have some high school students here, you can understand this. Earlier on, you heard people talking about how we get family engagement, family voice into what the experience of school is like. And imagine that you happen to be a secondary parent that had, 3 kids in school, and every teacher wanted to get your input into how to best support your child. So while we don't have the opportunity at secondary to have those half days meet and greets with families, we have had very meaningful conversations about how to engage with families in a meaningful way that doesn't result in them getting 18 to 20 different individual surveys to complete. So we still very much value and need parent engagement, parent involvement, and feedback from students about their own experience. You heard Steph mention street data, and really the only way that we can hear about what student experiences are is for them to tell us and for the parents to tell us. So that's a big part of the student growth experience, and information is something that will help us. And so you can see here on the screen, this comes right from the critical attributes themselves. Most teachers do some type of feedback of students already. The student growth goal experience now just expects it, and it's not something that is part of an evaluation of the teachers, the feedback itself. It's more, how do you teachers get feedback from the students, and how does that inform your practice? How are you getting information about the student experience, and how is that informing your practice? We want kids and teachers to be able to use that information in a safe way that feels supportive and like a community is being built, not a top-down initiative that's requiring people to do an expose of their practice, because that would be counterproductive. We want this to be very organic and connected and grounded in a relationship in the classroom. The other thing that is a focus of the critical attributes is student engagement in their own assessment. And again, you can see some of the explanations of these. That last bullet point, that students are able to monitor their progress on the learning goal. This is really important for kids to know what's expected of them. And when we think of some of our most vulnerable learners, kids that may be still learning English, students that might have a disability, students that do best with projects and hands-on summative assessments, being able to know very clearly what the expectation is and then being able to show their own progress of how they're mastering it is really important. And just with what Sandy was saying a moment ago about how the Finn Hill 8th grade team is talking about progress toward learning, I think in education, sometimes we've overemphasized what kids can do the first time they do something in a classroom. And a lot of times, that means they already knew how to do it when they before they even got there. And I think that learning has to do with trial and error and pushing and perseverance and productive struggle. And so building in that capacity for teachers and students to learn together and to demonstrate that sometimes it takes more than one attempt to get to that result of meeting standard is what we're trying to work on here. Last thing I wanted to mention is, in addition to the critical attributes here with the student growth goals, I'm working with Katie Badger to help facilitate the other certificated educator evaluation pilot. And we really modeled it after these 6 critical attributes because we found it to be such a powerful experience that we are using these to assess and explore a new way of evaluating our other certificated educators, which are like our counselors, our school psychologists, OTPT, and so forth. So with that, looks like Matt's up next. Thank you.
All right, good evening. I'm Matt Livingston, Director of Secondary for the West Region. Excited to share with you some highlights from the first week of school. So what better way to show up to work than to have a bunch of students there cheering you on with banners and music and pom-poms in some cases. So the bottom left there, that's a group of students welcoming back the staff at Finn Hill Middle School. And of course, what else is better than getting fed really well by your administrator? So on the top left, that's Dr. Bell barbecuing burgers for the staff at Lake Washington. And next to that picture is Dr. O'Donnell, who's flipping Friday flapjacks for the staff at ICS and community school. Students at EAS got their lockers on the first day of school and practicing the combinations, and for many of the students, it's the first time that they've had to open a lock like that. As Dr. Meisner shared, the middle schools, many of them did a staggered start, and so that was an opportunity for the 7th and 8th grade students to lead tours for the incoming 6th grade. So in the top right there, that's Kamiakin, and those students are getting a tour of the office area. And then in the bottom right, those student leaders are leading discussions, having activities for students, and helping to build that school community on the first day. And then you've got the big school-wide assemblies. So that's Finn Hill and the student leaders in their pink cowboy hats, building community and a lot of spirit. And in the bottom left, in the blue shirts, that's Rose Hill Middle School, the student leaders engaging the students in activities and some dances and all kinds of fun things for the students on their first day. This is one of my favorite pictures, that middle picture. That's Emerson K-12 and the students having a picnic on the first day, happy to see each other and just having lunch and enjoying their friendships. Sports has already started, believe it or not. It's the second week of school, but last week we already had our first football game. So I understand that Lake Washington High School snatched victory from the jaws of defeat at the last second with a game-winning field goal. I also heard they were our only high school team that had a victory last week. So we will improve as the season goes. So that's LDUB. One thing that we've been doing in our secondary schools for a couple years, but this year especially, is we're really naming that cell phones are a challenge for students to stay focused in school. And so a lot of communication with families and with staff to really support ways that we can help students put their cell phones away, they're in their backpacks or in their lockers, or in this case, many teachers are using a cell phone caddy where kids put their phones in the caddy. And this teacher, her name is Miss Thody at Lake Washington High School, really kind of went over the top with her design for her cell phone caddy, and who wouldn't want to put their cell phone there? So really appreciate her efforts, and really it's all in the spirit of put the distractions away so that we can focus on learning. In addition to the student growth goals, our team has been partnering with the Center of Educational Leadership at the University of Washington for the last several years. We're really trying to develop our own skill set in developing instructional leaders in our principals, and also in our skill set as principal supervisors. One of the big themes that has been part of that work is, how do we want students to feel every day when they get home from school? And we want them to be happy and proud. And so happy and proud about their friendships, about their learning, about the challenges and struggles that they're persevering through, and how do we as the adults help to facilitate that experience for them through professional learning for staff, and also in the ways that we impact that experience directly. So having Happy and Proud in mind, data is really important so that we know kind of where we are and where we're headed. You've heard several people already talk about street data. What we've used for millennia is a lot of quantitative data, right? So like bar graphs and pie charts, and that's helpful so that we know what's our graduation rate, what's our percentage rate of passing certain assessments or what have you. But it doesn't always tell us enough detail, and it certainly doesn't tell us, so what do you do about it, right? So this book, Street Data, was introduced to us by Dr. Krieger a handful of years ago. Many of us have read it, and what it shares is that satellite data, that's that quantitative data, that's not sufficient. It's helpful. We need it. It's just not sufficient. So the next layer of data is your map data, and that might be some specific standards in English or standards in math that would be a focus area. That's also helpful, but not sufficient. And so street data is that street level data of actually talking to students, hearing about their experiences directly from them, and having them help us know what to do to make sure that they're happy and proud when they leave school each day. One of the tools that we've been using from the Center of Educational Leadership is the inquiry cycle, and that's the image on the right side. And if we kind of dive into that, one thing that we've had principals do, and we've been working closely with them last year, and super excited to continue that work this year with not only principals but associate principals, is to help principals identify a small group of students, that'll be their focus group, to better understand those students' experience. Have listening sessions with those students. And what I would say is what we would typically do over the years is we would meet with a group of students, and then later we would meet with a different group of students, and then the next month maybe we'd meet with an even different group of students. So we're talking to students all the time. What's different about this is meeting with the same group of students, the same 6 to 8 students regularly throughout the year. And it's totally different. You're building a stronger relationship with those students. You're able to kind of monitor their progress, whether that's through their social needs or their grades, their attendance. But they're also providing you that ongoing feedback on how it's going and what we may need to change to support their student experience. And then, of course, we want to visit them in class, right? So we're in classrooms visiting those same students that are part of the focus group, tracking their qualitative and quantitative data throughout the year, talking to their teachers about the instructional strategies that they're using that are having a beneficial effect, and what are some strategies that they may try based on the students' feedback to us, and then making adjustments to those practices. So that's the cycle. And once we've adjusted practices, we go right back to the top and do it all again, right? And so it's ongoing throughout the year. The through line, the image there, the idea here is that data, that student data, that qualitative data, the quantitative data, that's all of our data. So we're not pointing fingers at kids or families or teachers or principals. We're holding up the mirror, and what's our role in it? That's our data, and what's my role in helping to impact principals so that they're in the best position to support teachers so that they're in the best position to change the experience of all students so that they go home happy and proud every day. I think I covered it. I brought my notes just in case. Thanks for supporting that work, and look forward to providing more highlights in the future.
All right, good evening. As shared, I'm Heidi Paul, Director of the Elementary Region, and you see our 10 schools up there. We have 2 new principals this year, 2 new leaders that actually happen to have been a part of our district as associate principals, and they are now in the role of principals. So we have Liz Forba over at Meade, and Taylor Davis, who is at Dickinson Explorer Elementary. And I just have to say, I regularly wake up and I feel a great sense of pride. I love my job. I get to work at schools, these 10 schools like the others you've heard about tonight. Their entire communities are showing up, and they're really creating experiences for kids that are so far ahead than what I think most of us have ever experienced, that when I leave, I feel excited and inspired, and there's something to be said about that. So you're looking at a number of different pictures up there, and I want to give you some, as I build on that, I want to give you some perspective of what I mean when I say that. What you see up there are a number of different leaders, I wish I could capture all, who, along with their staff, were working to think about how they were showing up for kids. And one of the things that we've been holding ourselves accountable to, Dr. Stembridge has prompted us in his reading and research of thinking about how do we want kids to feel? Just simply asking ourselves that question. How do we want kids and our staff to feel when they come to our buildings? So that was on their minds as they were thinking about, leaders were thinking about bringing our staff back as well as students. So what did that look like? You see Lori Pierce down there over at Parks at the bottom. Every staff member was manning a door, and Director Stewart was there with me as we watched the staff come out and walk down the line and look every student in the eye and greet them and talk to them about how excited they were to walk them into class. They did such a great job at Parks, and Director Stewart, I don't know if you remember this happening, that several parents began to chase the line, and these were the words, "Wait, stop, you didn't say goodbye to me." And I watched one particular student said, "Mom, I'm good. I want to go inside." And I think when you think about the evidence of students feeling happy and proud, you see it showing up in those moments there. What else might make students feel happy and proud? Being trusted and seen as leaders and seeing their potential to lead others. And so we had at Blackwell, you see a picture up there, we had students, patrollers who were there before the time they were scheduled to be, proudly putting on their vests and thinking about how they were going to work on creating an experience for kids so they could be happy and proud. And they stood outside and they welcomed kids. And I thought I had a moment of seeing some of these kids grow, that they were once welcomed by that patrol. And now they were proudly in this role where they were contributing to the school. You also see a number of leaders were thinking about what might be an obstacle to feel happy and proud, and sometimes a lack of predictability or understanding. And so we had leaders, like you see in the upper left-hand corner, riding the bus with some students who had never navigated the bus system before, just so they could have a sense of feeling accomplished and successful on that first day. And you think about those tiny little adjustments make all the difference. And you see in the bottom left-hand corner, Julie Guest over at Smith was working with the PTSA, and as we had families arriving, they were supporting the connections for new families in the area, and how might we help them to engage so they can also, as a family, support their learner to feel happy and proud. Lastly, I want to point out in the top picture up there, you see Kim Blanco and Erica Gray up at Baker Elementary School. Now, this is a whole level of commitment I just want to share with you. They, as a staff, have been working on, and if you are listening tonight, we are going to trust that you're not going to share the secret, but they were working hard on their flash mob dance that will happen at their first assembly. That includes inflatables. I had the opportunity to practice dance moves with them, and why are they doing this? Because we know when we don't take ourselves too seriously and we create an environment where kids can laugh and feel connected and have fun, that also creates a space where they feel happy and proud. So those are some things I wanted to point out tonight in our East region. And so as we think about tonight, I'm going to build off some of the information that Dr. Livingston shared about our work with the Center of Educational Leadership, specifically in the area of professional learning communities for our leaders. And so as we continue to build on the success from last year in our work, as we move into the 24 and 25 school year, we'll continue to think about how we're going to hone our leadership skills to influence the through line. And I'm going to talk about that, build on a little bit more with Dr. Livingston said in just a minute, but to hold ourselves accountable to partner in the work and think about how we can all contribute whatever our role to influence that. The other thing, while we have been meeting in professional learning communities for quite some time, thinking about how we adjust and change our practice so that way we are entering spaces where learning is happening and we are collectively refining our skills, thinking about observation and how we might give feedback for growth. The ultimate hope for when we think about even Michael Jordan, one of the most successful basketball players of all time, had a coach alongside him, supporting him and reflecting, affirming progress and success and thinking about those baby steps to help him grow. And as we think about our leaders as they show up in their community, thinking about how they can show up in the role of a coach and provide feedback to support the growth of students. So thinking about why we want to continue to work on opportunities where our leaders can meet in professional learning communities, there's really 3 areas that we are considering that will really help us continue to support kids ultimately experiencing a sense of feeling happy and proud in their success. One of these reasons why we want to continue to work on this is we want to focus on improving those experiences for students, especially those who might be furthest from educational justice. There are many students, there might be many families who can relate as well, who, while with their best of efforts, haven't always had that experience. And so how do we hold ourselves accountable so we can make sure that we are coming alongside all students and providing them access? Another is to be thinking about what our leaders need to do to continue to grow and improve. And so that's certainly a part of the reason why this work is so important. And lastly, as we think about organizational growth, what we can do as an entire system to deprivatize classrooms, to be thinking about how we can continue to cultivate a district-wide culture of improvement, and also to help individuals, whatever their role, including CLT members, to also be supportive and accountable to the work. And I'm going to explain that a little more in just a second. What you see up there is something that Dr. Livingston spoke about earlier, the through line, and it's a little bit different graphic, just to give you an idea of what that means. If we think about that top graphic up there, that the student is ultimately the individual that we are supporting, thinking about all those who might be supporting those efforts. What is someone in our role as a director doing to come alongside our principals to help them feel supported, affirmed, and also grow? How does the leader in the school, whether the associate principal or the leader, come alongside the teacher and be able to reflect their strengths, and also thinking about what it might be that those next steps for their growth, so that ultimately all of us collectively working on that together can provide students with the best possible experience. The other graphic you see up there is something many of us have been using and adapted this language. When we think about ultimately students and where they're at, some of that deficit mindset has happened over the years because a student might not be there yet, but there are so many steps in between to get them there. And ultimately what we want to do is to honor students as individuals, even ourselves as a staff and leaders, is to think about what is the current state of progress in this particular skill area, what might ideal growth or progress look like, and what are the baby steps that happen in between. And this might seem like such a simple idea, but it's so often it escapes us and we expect these huge jumps to happen. So I'm going to make fun of myself and say, if I were to thinking about today to run a marathon, this girl ain't going to do it very well. She once ran in college, but I'm going to need to think about what are the baby steps to get myself back in to some of the skills to create some endurance and strength. That's going to look different if I ask any of us to start working on getting ready to run a marathon. We would assess where we're at, what's our current state, and what are those baby next steps to get there. Also, we're going to do our best when we have feedback on those steps as they're going. So as you think about that and keep that in mind, our leaders are going to be meeting this year and continuing the work to build on some of those skills in a number of different ways. And you heard some of this spoken about tonight, but I want you to think about as I'm sharing, this is really as our leaders are coming together in their professional learning communities. So as Dr. Livingston shared, they're going to be identifying, in a group of about 4 to 6 leaders, they're going to be working together to look at chosen focus group students for the year. And they will look at specifically an observed skill, an observed theme that's showing up of a student challenge, and how they might be in their role can come alongside through observation as they come into the classroom and challenge themselves to be thinking about noticings and wonderings. So often we, no matter how much experience you have, our brain sometimes short circuits and we can form judgments or biases as we're observing things. What's wonderful about this work is it really slows leaders down to be curious and to say, what are they noticing in the classroom, to avoid jumping to conclusions, and to be thinking about how they might come alongside the teacher and begin to ask questions. Again, all to continue to think about how to improve student success. Some of the work will be coming alongside in their cohorts in a school visit. A principal or associate principal will be hosting, and they will go into a classroom and look for strengths, Look for things that the teacher might be on the verge of when we think about that current state to ideal state, and what might be some feedback that the leader can give to help partner in the success. Also, that what happens in these school visits, which is a wonderful opportunity, is in that group of 4 to 6 leaders, a leader might identify an area that they're trying to work on getting better at as they're working with their teachers, and the other leaders who are joining that group will sit in a circle and they will problem solve together, provide some feedback, and that is what is known as the consultancy protocol. Ideally, overall, it leaves the leader with some actionable next steps, holding them accountable to go back into the building and be thinking again, not sitting in a seat of judgment, but how can I come alongside our staff and partner in the work? Ultimately, the other thing that's happening during our professional learning communities is we leaders are harnessing and practicing an equity stance so that we can continue to increase asset-based approaches and help close opportunity gaps. Before I go through that slide, I want to give you an example. Just today, I was at Blackwell and Smith Elementary, and we got into classrooms. So you think about the through line. Without some of these practices set in place, someone in my role might not often get into the classroom. And we are actively getting into the classroom together, and those leaders and I, we observed what was happening in the classroom, and we chose a focus area. What would one particular school wanted to talk about belonging, and another leader wanted to talk about engagement. So we went into the classroom, and we observed for 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, we challenged ourselves to be curious. What were we noticing, and what might we want to ask questions about? In 5 minutes, the leader and I noticed something that was really interesting. It would have been quick to observe a 4th grade classroom and see that students were writing different lengths of paragraphs. And our wonder was, well, why are some students writing more than others? So we began to ask some of the students questions. Tell me about your response today. How come you chose to write so many sentences? How come you chose to write one phrase? And I will fast forward the story and tell you through our questioning, we learned that one student said, I do so much better when I have a piece of paper. That's why I wrote so much today. When I get on the computer, I get really stuck in my thinking. The student who wrote just a phrase said, I really don't like to write, and if you can let me have a computer, I could write a lot more of what my thinking is. From there, we began to think about, oh, that's interesting. What do we need to do in this classroom so we're really getting the best, setting students up for the best success? So that's an example of the way in which this work and these practices and protocols are bringing us into the classroom to help us hold ourselves accountable to helping kids grow. As I close, we've talked about that theme of happy and proud, and I just want to share to the board and to those listening, I want to express our collective excitement and optimism for the future as we think about some of the work that's being done. We have always worked really hard as a district to support our kids, and these adjustments are bringing such a great sense of elation and excitement about the future ahead. Because ultimately we believe our students deserve to be in an environment where their identities are truly valued and that they have an opportunity to experience the greatest sense of belonging and academic success. So I'm going to zoom out and think about tonight, whether you're listening at home, whether you're here, whether you're a board member, a parent, a staff member, no matter your role at a school. This work, as the old adage is really going to be how does our village come together and support kids? And we have an opportunity in front of us, no matter your role, to think about how can we do this work together? How do you want to hold yourself in your role, whether you're a student here tonight or you have been in the district for a long time in your role? What do we need to do so that all students can have an experience to be happy and proud? Whether it is calling ourselves to focus on all learning and their experience as assets, holding ourselves accountable in language that might be outside of that. Perhaps it is remaining curious in the work, like the example I said tonight, and not assuming a student doesn't know how to write because we just see one short response. Perhaps it is remaining curious in the work and avoiding assumptions or bias that short circuit our conversations sometimes. Also, it might be staying brave in our actions. We are navigating new experiences, learning more about each other, and sometimes that calls us to be brave and to speak with courage so that our students can experience those learning opportunities we've been sharing. Also, as we navigate challenges, some of which we haven't before as a district, how can we partner in solutions as a community? And lastly, our kids deserve it. How do we call ourselves to not get comfortable and be in a space to call ourselves to relentlessly grow? So that way, all of our students, no matter where they are right now, tonight at sports practice or in their room on video games, all kids can feel happy and proud every single day. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. It's an exciting first week of school. We will go ahead and move on to the next item on our agenda this evening, which is public comment. Thank you, everyone, for waiting. The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District welcomes the public to the business meetings of the board and encourages community engagement. The board dedicates 30 minutes to hear from the public during the public comment period of the meeting, with each individual provided up to 2 minutes to speak. Participants should not expect a response from the board at the end of their comments, as we dedicate this time to listening to your voice and would like to get as many members of the public an opportunity to speak as the time allows. Members of the public can sign up to participate on the district website at lwsd.org/board/public comment. Sign up closes at noon on the day of the board meeting, and comments will be offered in the order of sign up. The first person that we have signed up to speak this evening is Sumaya. Is Sumaya here? No, Sumaya. Banerjee? Not here? Okay. Then we will move on. Janelle Schermerhorn?
Good evening. May I begin? Okay. I'm a district parent here to present opportunities to enhance the safety and mental health of our 30,000 students, specifically related to communication between educators and students. 10% of U.S. K-12 students experience some form of educator sexual misconduct during their school years, with 96% unreported. This 10% was reported by the Department of Education in 2004 and held up in a 2022 survey of 6,000 recent graduates. This suggests that up to 3,000 of our current students could experience inappropriate behavior from a trusted school employee. And even if we assume that our district practices and commitment to student well-being reduces that risk tenfold, that's 300 students that could be impacted. We know that in our district, the ability for an educator and student to communicate directly from personal accounts is a vulnerability. We may think this is rare or uncontrollable, but it is not rare, and we can take action to protect students, particularly in the case of coach-athlete communication. First, the district could provide and require a safe communication platform for all sports. Parent-managed apps like Team Snap lack school oversight and give coaches direct access to student phone numbers, leading to cases of one-to-one messaging. Second, it should be made clear to parents and students that school employees should not communicate with students on non-district platforms, no matter the content. This simple rule eliminates judgment calls. Next, including grooming behaviors in our understanding of and policies on sexual harassment would clarify that seemingly innocent behaviors can lead to blurred boundaries. Last, finding incident reporting procedures and context on school or district sites should require minimal digging. With staff, student, and parents working together, we can get this right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. The next comment we have is Arthur Weiner.
I printed one out for each of you. Forgive me, it's been about a year since I have spoken before the board, and I was not aware of some of the new rules. I have to say, it appears you're trying to limit public comment. Good evening, Lake Washington School District Board members, Dr. Holman, members of the community. My name is Arthur Weiner. My wife and I have 3 children. 1 graduated from high school within the district, and 2 more attend Lake Washington schools. First, allow me to thank you. Seriously, it takes hours of dedication, and I commend you for making the time required. It's easy for me to stand here for my 3 minutes, but as I've learned, it's 2. So your commitment is much greater than mine, I admit. And before I get to my main topic, I wish to express my opinion on how inappropriate and unnecessary it is for Lake Washington School District students to know the gender identity and sexual orientation of their teachers' children. There is simply no educational benefit as I see it. And the discussion that leads to this being shared has no place in the public school system. So I challenge the board and I request that the district create a formal policy against teachers injecting their personal situation or their family dynamics for personal gain in the classroom. Now, I stand before you this evening concerned about the rate at which spending continues to increase in the district, while the quality of service delivered for the cost is not increasing, in my opinion. How are the constituents benefiting from the additional $50 million being spent this year? The problem with the district budget, as I see it, is the cost of the service delivered is increasing at a rate that is unsustainable. We have 2% fewer teachers, FTE certified and classified staff. We have 2% less than we did 5 years ago.
If you could wrap up your comment.
And the total cost has increased 33%. Nearly $100 million, that is a 1 with 8 zeros,
If you could wrap up.
is being spent on fewer teachers. My fellow taxpayers, let that sink in. $100 million more than 5 years ago. I'll wrap up and conclude that it is not too early to work on controlling the spending for next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next comment we have is from Jill Fletcher.
Hi, my name is Jill Fletcher. I am the parent of 3 Lake Washington School District students. I'm also a substitute teacher for the district. I would like to ask the board to consider reinstating the elementary school goal-setting conferences later in the semester rather than the family connection meetings and half-day schedule for the first 3 days of elementary school. My children experienced higher levels of anxiety and emotional dysregulation because they did not experience routine school day until the 4th day of school. I would like to tell you that half-days at the start of the school year is not equitable for working families. And finally, I'd like to make a case that families can consider, families can answer questions for the family connection meetings with a paper that is sent home. And encouraging families to come to back to school night is a better option for supporting the social and emotional health of students and their families. Family connection meetings required 3 half-days at the start of the school year. And let me tell you about the anxiety and dysfunction of these days for my family. My daughter wanted to use the new lunchbox. She wanted to see her library teacher from last year, and she was worried about the negative numbers on the number line in front of the classroom. On the 4th day of school, it was finally time for her full 6-hour day of school, and she didn't even want to come to school because she was tired of waiting to use her lunchbox. She had not even seen her library teacher in person, and her 4th grade teacher hadn't even taught a math lesson. My daughter's anxiety and emotional distress resulted in a tantrum and fighting with her siblings and me on the way to school. And when she got in line, rather than talking to her friends, she stared at the ground with tears coming down her cheeks. I left Robert Frost campus questioning, why does it have to be this way? Family Connection meetings are scheduled between the hours of 12:30 and 4. This timing is not equitable for families who are working. Back to school night is a better option because it supports the social and emotional health of students because they get to see their teachers and peers, and is equitable for working families because it takes place after hours. Not one question that was asked during the Family Connection meeting required this meeting to be in person. When I asked questions about field trips, Can opportunities for fourth graders, and auditions for the school play, teachers answered my question with, "We don't know yet." And we haven't had any information about that yet.
If you
I
could
was
wrap up your
frustrated,
comment.
and I was left feeling that the conferences were a poor use of my time, and the conferences could have happened. If they happened later in the semester, the teachers would have been able to answer my questions. I will finally conclude with asking you to consider reinstating goal-setting conferences later in the semester rather than having these Family Connection meetings and half-days at the beginning of school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have signed up Sunaina.
Good evening, everyone. We have a fourth grader who attends Alcott Elementary. We were very surprised to learn that all 3 classes of Alcott fourth grade have a classroom strength of 30. We have very deep concerns on the quality of education our daughter will receive. She has had amazing and phenomenal teachers in Alcott so far, and we have seen the impact of high-quality education. We are now concerned that there will be a drastic dip. She's a bright young girl who, along with a few other Alcott peers, won 2nd place at a regional DI competition and made it to state 4th place. Their team could not have done this without the strong foundational support they got from Alcott. We really want to ensure that she and her friends and peers continue their education in an environment where they can thrive versus survive. In communicating with the principal, he assured us that they will do their best to make this a great year regardless of classroom size. We truly have great respect for Alcott teachers for their dedication and love they give our kids, but it is obvious that our teachers, just like any human, has limited time, energy, and bandwidth. Larger class sizes spread our teachers too thin and reduce the level of attention to each student. This time around, we're taking this issue very seriously because as parents, we also feel we failed to use the proper channels to advocate for our son who attended 4th grade at Alcott 2 years ago when the classroom size had already increased to 26. Alcott has the highest number of student enrollments in the district, and we understand from Dr. Holman's slides he presented in the recent PTSA Council that LWSD had only 1.5 reduction in budgets versus other districts. We realize that for a district to have such an amazing budget, there truly must have been very good thought leadership to make it happen. And we truly trust that the same leadership will support us in our quest to ensure our children are given adequate attention and care. We request the board to review our concern regarding the high student-teacher ratio and provide support to these 4th grade teachers. Please let us not consider a class size as 30 as an acceptable norm. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Maria.
Good evening. I come today to speak to the board as a community member and as a parent to a 4th grade student at Alcott Elementary. This is our family's first year at Lake Washington School District, and my children are super excited and have had a great start to the year. With that said, I am here because I'm concerned that the current 4th grade class sizes, 30 students per class at Alcott Elementary, are affecting the quality of learning and placing an undue burden on the 4th grade teaching staff. As the board is well aware, the aging infrastructure of Alcott Elementary is creating a suboptimal learning environment for our students. The current 4th grade class exacerbates those challenges. I was told that at least one 4th grade teacher removed furniture in their classroom to make room for student desks. I have no doubt the teachers are doing their best, and I applaud each and every one of them. A manageable student-to-teacher ratio is imperative in 4th grade when these students are building on the fundamentals of learning. They're building these paragraphs that were just discussed. I really hope the district will consider providing additional resources to the school to alleviate the challenges posed by the current fourth grade class sizes at Alcott. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And the last person we have signed up is Ying Zhu. Oh, okay. Then that will conclude our public comment for this evening. If you would like to stay for the rest of the board meeting, please feel free. If not, you can go ahead and exit and we'll continue with our meeting. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the September 9th, 2024 consent agenda. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Guthrie and seconded by Director Yocum. Superintendent Holman, will you please poll the board?
Director Yocum,
Yes.
Director Stewart,
Yes.
Director La Liberty,
Yes.
Vice President Guthrie,
Yes.
and President Choi.
Yes, motion carries. Superintendent Holman, will you please summarize the donations this evening?
Yeah, in the board's packet tonight, you have $14,800 of donations from our PTSAs and PTOs to, I was going to look up exactly what that was because I believe it was Smith Elementary. But anyways, it's to support just the ongoing extracurricular program services and supports for students that our schools are able to provide because of the partnerships with our PTSAs, our foundation, and private sources. So thank you to our PTAs and PTOs.
Yes, thank you. The next item on our agenda this evening is legislative business. Director Yocum?
Yeah, I will try and make this quick. So I've been working to prepare for the WASDA General Assembly, which will take place September 20th through 21st. And for any community members that are here and curious about this, WASDA is the association of close to 1,500 school board directors from across the state. And General Assembly is one of the most important school board events of the year. Board directors update WASDA's advocacy platform and vote on legislative and permanent positions. So thank you to all the board members for providing your feedback on the last round of WASDA amendments to the amendments. We have a consensus on positions, so we do not need to discuss this evening. I do feel confident representing the Lake Washington School Board as our voting delegate to the General Assembly, and thank you for your patience and support as I navigate this new to me process. Also, really quickly, I'll be fast here. In preparation for General Assembly, I've been meeting with Director Area 2 ledge reps, and we've had excellent conversations that have deepened my understanding of WASDA positions and legislative priorities for the upcoming session. Additionally, I've been viewing recorded webinars that focus on the key legislative issues that align with WASDA priorities. And again, if you have any time, I highly encourage you to watch these. There are live meetings through WASDA, but I like watching the recordings so I can pause and take notes. They're on the WASDA website, and I can send links if anyone's interested. That's it.
Yes, Director Holman, do we have a staff update?
We do. It's very brief, but thought we'd give the board an update.
Okay, my brief update. So we've been working on scheduling a visit to Juanita Elementary and Juanita High School for Representative Goodman. That will happen on September 30th. The request came through the Washington School Nutrition Association so he could learn more about the food services in the district. And Rep. Goodman will also plans on speaking to 4th and 5th graders at Juanita L and an AP US Government class at Juanita High School. And then in the coming weeks, we will be reaching out to our state legislators to start scheduling pre-session meetings, which those will most likely occur in November and December. And that's it. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much.
And cut.
Perfect. Thank you. The first item on our non-consent agenda this evening is a behavioral health services update. Dr. Holman.
Yeah, and so tonight the board will be monitoring results 3, which really looks at the life and global citizenship skills, and the primary data source is the reporting back from our students about their experiences, their skills that they see as reported in the Panorama survey. One of the elements that we know is that the behavioral health, the mental health, and the well-being of our students plays a considerate role in results 3. And so tonight we have our Director of Student Services, Johnny Fu, to provide an update to the board on behavioral health services, knowing how important and critical this is to our students, their success, and their ability to truly access school. And so, Johnny, welcome tonight, and happy to hand this off to you.
Thank you, Dr. Holman. Do I put the, I'm on? Oh, you're good. I'm okay if the PowerPoint didn't show up. Thank you, Teresa. Appreciate it. And good evening. It's always great to start off the year with you all. And I always say it's my annual hot seat. So tonight, it's my annual hot seat moment with the board. And I'm really excited to be with you all tonight and be able to share what is our behavioral health update. And I know that I've been here each year kind of describing what does it look like and sort of talking about post-pandemic a little bit. And so I'm excited to share a little bit more context this coming year. Here's sort of a quick agenda that I want to walk you all through. Is just kind of give a quick Lake Washington mental health status update for our students of what we are hearing, what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, as well as to give an update around our service providers from last year, particularly 3 service providers that have been really critical partnerships in this work, and I'm really excited to share some data points and some outcomes of theirs. And then I'm also excited to share some expansion services that we'll be announcing tonight with you all. So that's sort of the quick agenda. Oh, I can do my best to speak right into the mic. You all are probably sick and tired of me showing this graphic around post-pandemic and sort of what does it look like post-pandemic as we've used national health models to kind of model out what might be the experience of community members, individuals, and our students. And for the last 3 years, I've come to you all and said, hey, we're in post-pandemic and we're trying to figure this out, trying to better understand our student context. And for me, this year feels exciting to say we have a better sense of how the pandemic has shifted our students' experiences, especially their developmental growth, and sort of what does that look like? One of the things that we have noticed post-pandemic and feel a lot more solid in saying, hey, we have seen their developmental shift and their social and emotional development change. And when we say change, what we specifically see is their social engagement. You know, I described a few years ago, we know that students are coming back and their social engagement just looks different. Their skills of engaging with one another, their relationship with one another has shifted because of the remote world. Well, what does that look like a few years out? Well, we're starting to understand what that looks like in terms of the social engagement of students and how they're navigating a new environment for their world. And so one of the things that we have heard about the pandemic is there's this mental health crisis. We're seeing higher rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide. And one of the things that I want to share a little bit tonight is what are our students saying, right? We've heard sort of broadly from the media, this crisis, what are our students saying? And what's great is over the last few years, we've had an opportunity to take the Healthy Youth Survey with our 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. And I just want to share this particular question because this oftentimes comes up. It's thoughts of suicide in the past 12 months. And as you see that question, it oftentimes is jarring, right? When we hear suicide, it is jarring. It stirs up emotions in us. It stirs up sort of crisis, sort of like what's going on. And one of the things I want to just show and demonstrate is our youth are responding that at a lower rate than their King County peers. And this is a trend that we have seen since 2021. The reason why I had data for 2021 and not previously is in 2021, there's a new cohort of students that we have asked these questions to. The other question I want to bring up tonight is these 2 other questions, this other question of felt sad or hopeless in the past 2 weeks. And one of the things that, again, that you see is Lake Washington youth respond much lower than King County youth peers. And that's across King County comparing our LWSD youth. And why would I share this? What is the important context to this? is I'm about to share sort of some of our service providers' updates. And although there's no silver bullet, which we wish there was a silver bullet, we know that there's youth in our system who are asking that they need help, right? What does help look like in our district? What does that look like for our community? And how do we respond to those needs when they do show up? And in the post-pandemic world, what we see is when students need it, it is acute and intense. And the timeliness of our response is absolutely critical in getting students the necessary services and access to support, as well as how to help them engage and engage them in getting back into the educational experience. So I talk a lot about critical partnerships, and I'll say it again, as school districts can't do it alone. These are some critical partners that we have aligned with over the past few years, and they are steady partners of ours. They believe in the work that we do, and a true partnership that I can call and be like, hey, I need to do some adjustments, or we can have hard conversations, because we really believe that ultimately what we're trying to do is increase the access to mental health services for our students, and then also work on destigmatizing some of the notion of what mental health is. So with that, I'm going to share 3 particular community service providers tonight. It's going to be Evergreen Health, as well as Youth Eastside Service, and then another community partner called Communities in School. And I'm going to start with Evergreen Health tonight, and I want to say that they are in our 4 comprehensive high school, each full-time, and the work that they do is bucketed in these 3 areas: mental health support, crisis intervention, and resource connection. And I want to lean into a little bit about the brief interventions, as they are trained clinicians around delivering mental health supports and interventions over a course of 4 to 6 weeks. And it is actually a partnership between Evergreen and the UW Smart Center that train these social workers on school-based interventions. And I want to just kind of distinguish a little bit here is when we talk about school-based mental health, we're not talking it from a medical perspective. We're not saying, hey, you're going to see a clinician and you're going to go see this person 60 minutes once a week for however long. What we're saying is school-based mental health is somewhat a different model that mimics sort of our intervention model. Is how can we intervene and create interventions for our students so that they can develop skills and still remain in the school, and then also practice those skills with feedback. Now, there are times when crises do occur, and as you can see, they do suicide risk evaluations, which is really impactful for our youth and for our schools, and I'll explain a little bit more here a little bit. Some of their intended outcomes is, and as you can see up here, I'm just gonna lean into the first part of reduce emergency department visits. This is really important. Previously to the service, when a student would say they have suicide ideation or something related to suicide, our school counselors would do a good job doing a quick assessment on them and then potentially send them to the ER, don't know what to do, and then send them to the ER. And that can be really a jarring experience for our youth and our families. And so with the Evergreen Health social workers, they can do a comprehensive risk assessment and develop a plan in place to keep students in the school during the day or find support at home and be able to make sure the student is safe and be able to come back in the near future. And that helps families not have to navigate a complex emergency room situation. And it's never fun to go to the emergency room as it is. It just becomes a little bit more jarring if you feel like you're in a crisis situation. Evergreen social workers, their data is collected on a calendar year. So this is really just the first half of this year. So first half of our school year from January to June. And I want to share a little bit around, you'll see up here, their goal is to connect with 350 students. And we use connection for a specific reason and not case manage. Case manage is a very much a medical model. When we say connect, we say we're connecting with students intentionally to develop skills or work on some behavioral health goal that they have. And if it goes beyond 6 to 8 weeks, what we're going to do is refer them outside to a community resource or connect them to their insurer. And so, as you can see, Evergreen has a goal of 350. To date, just half of the year, they are pretty darn close. They're at 200 and about 50. I would imagine they're going to surpass that by the end of the year with their data. As well as they have this goal of 2,300 interactions over the calendar year. Interaction is like advocacy. Interactions is like, how can I collaborate with your parents or a staff member on your behalf? Or what are the opportunities in which I might be able to connect you quickly to a resource? It doesn't mean that the student is in that social worker care for a brief intervention. And so far to date, they have 1,700 interactions, and I venture to say that number is going to be anywhere between 2,500 and 2,700 by the end of the school year. I want to move on to our Youth Eastside Service providers. This is for our middle school and choice schools. Very similar to our Evergreen Health model. You can see those three buckets: behavioral health skill building, crisis intervention, and community bridging. And I'm really excited and proud of some of the work that we've done in the middle school, as we have really offer an integrated model to behavioral health support. And so some of the intended outcomes from our intentional integrated model has been to improve student wellness, as well as lower future levels of behavioral health issues. And the lower future levels of behavioral health issues is something that is exciting for me, because that gets to destigmatizing mental health. Oftentimes when we hear mental health, we think about it as this internal conflict, internal problem, and sometimes it's so personal. And what we're saying is it's okay to not be okay, and how can we help each other, and also destigmatizing what mental health actually is. It's not something that is something's wrong with you. We all have mental health, and it's about creating wellness around it. And so some of the data points here that I want to share is that our behavioral health support specialists across 8 comprehensive middle school as well as 3 choice school, they have been able to participate in about 3,600 Tier 1 and Tier 2 sessions. And what that looks like is psychoeducation, going to a classroom, talking about anxiety or depression, or being able to do a parent chat, or going to a staff meeting and talking about mental health or how to access services. And so out of those 3,600 interactions, there's about 700 students from last year that require more than 3 additional connections, meaning that it's a brief intervention. And so when we think about those 700 individuals that require sort of Tier 3, we call it sort of intentional, intensive services and support, 88% of those students reported successfully meeting their behavioral health goals. That's really exciting for me, because when we think about students who are in middle school saying, hey, I'm struggling with social isolation, or hey, I don't know how to navigate this, I feel sad. Well, what are the skills that we can help develop and cultivate in meeting your goals? And our students, 88% of our students who were a part of the 700, about 700 of the students said that they successfully met their intended behavioral health goals. And that's exciting for me. I want to share a little bit about communities in school. This is a little bit different model than a mental health model. This is what we talk about when we say, sometimes families need that bridge between the educational world and the community world. And sometimes the community world gets in the way of how our students access the educational experience. And communities and schools came out of the pandemic, came out of a partnership with the city of Kirkland and Redmond, and continues to be strong. And some of the services they offer here is, academic, behavior, basic needs, family engagement. I really want to double tap on family engagement. They really do a fantastic job engaging with families, going out in the community, and helping bridge whatever the difference is to really help students engage. And so some of their intended outcomes is attendance, behavior, social emotional skills, as well as coursework. When we look at their services across 6 sites last year, they served about 1,700 students through school-wide support. So similar to behavioral health support specialists, they did Tier 1, Tier 2, meaning they did some education, they did outreach, they did targeted support. Out of those 1,700 students, students that they support at school-wide, about 170 of them were on their caseload. And here are some of the demographics of these students. 88% of them were students of color. 96% were exposed to trauma. That's 22% increase from prior years. So we have a better context of what our students are coming into our building with and what are some of the support that they need. And from it, these are outcomes that our students reported back to us. So at the end of the year, we asked our students, how did we do? How did you do? 97% of them, as you can see, said they improved attendance, which is huge, right? Post-pandemic, we have seen a huge increase in truancy. How do we address that? Communities and Schools has provided some support, especially around family engagement. Again, behavior improvement, we saw decreases in discipline, increase in coursework, and improved social emotional skills. And so I know I did a quick run-by of our community providers, but these providers are really critical partnerships in our school community that have given us an opportunity to meet the needs of our students. So when I said post-pandemic, and you saw the statistics up there, when we said, 16% of students had thoughts of suicide in the past 12 months, well, we're uniquely nested here in Lake Washington School District to be able to meet those needs, to be able to respond to those students because of the resources and the community partnerships that we put in place. And so that's one of the things that I would like to say about post-pandemic is we've been able to offer the resources in our building and it's being utilized and being able to help students, one, meet their needs and then also be able to navigate what is somewhat a still evolving new social environment for them and requires different social engagement skills. Which leads me to sort of an announcement that I'm really excited about. We talk about mental health, we talk about sort of removing some of the barriers. That's why we have community mental health in our buildings. And we know that sometimes navigating the mental health system is just really complex and confusing. I oftentimes talk to families and they're like, hey, I go to one provider and I get a different answer or a different process, or I try to understand my insurance and that just doesn't make sense to me. And so I'm really excited to announce today that we have partnered with Care Solace for this incoming school year. And Care Solace is a care coordinator. What they do is help you navigate what is a complex systems as is. Say, hey, I need help or I'm looking for services. Can you help me with that? And they will help match you with a clinician. They will walk you through the process all the way up to your first meeting and then follow up with you after your first meeting with your clinician. And if it doesn't go well, they're gonna help you find another clinician. And so what we're excited about is really to decrease the time in which a student gets access to mental health services, irrespective of their insurance. The other thing that's exciting is it just doesn't not only does it benefit our students, it also benefits students' family members. So anybody in that student family member can get access to the support. In addition to that, our staff gets access to this as well, and their family members get access to the support at no cost. And so not only will this impact our students, but this is gonna impact Lake Washington School District and community as a whole. And I'm so excited to be able to announce that partnership, and that would not be possible if it wasn't for our Lake Washington Schools Foundation and City of Redmond, who have completely funded this partnership with Care Solace. So I know that's a quick drive-by, and I wanna just say thank you all for the support that you have offered over the years, and without your support, we wouldn't be able to meet our student needs and continue to make inroads around destigmatizing mental health in our community. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Fu. Are there any questions? Yes, Suniri.
Hi, I just wanted to say, first of all, I think what you're doing is really important. At least from the school that I come from, I go to Eastlake High School. In the past 2 years, there have been like 2 suicides at Eastlake High School, which is, really devastating for just the community in general. And my question was that I know you're doing a lot to, connect students with counselors and other mental health people that can support you, providers, but I do think a lot of it comes from just feeling socially isolated from your peers. Because in the end, you know, when I'm not at school, when I'm at home and just not talking to my counselors, my peers and other people my age are the ones I'm interacting with and in the end really wanting validation from. So I know it's might be kind of difficult with like HIPAA and not really being able to share like mental health information, but like especially with your statistic that a lot of those students are ELL students, I assume that a lot of that comes from just not being able to communicate with their own peers. So is there anything being done for peer-to-peer connection?
Yeah, thank you for that question, and I appreciate you sharing your experiences. Specifically, in what I shared early on is like the social engagement of our students have shifted and changed. It has gone remote, in some ways not sort of direct interaction. So to answer your question, some of our schools have developed sort of peer-to-peer services, like Lake Washington School District last year did a peer-to-peer service. That is something that is absolutely available to your building. The other thing too is we've offered some mental health classes that's directly could be in your building, and that's something that we've done at Tesla STEM, and we have seen that actually helped increase sort of social connection. And so currently right now we don't have anything at Eastlake, but that is something that I know that your school is thinking about and considering. We've had numerous conversations back in the spring about some mental health literacy work. Thank you.
Director Guthrie.
Yes, thank you so much for this work. And the CareSolace partnership is really amazing because that is a challenge is being able to connect with providers who can help in the community. And so being able to offer that for our families is really incredible, and staff as well. I had a question about what's the intake process for those students? So you kind of identified with the different partners that there's a few hundred students for each.
Yeah.
How are those students identified, or sort of how do they get connected with that support?
That's something that we've worked really hard over the years, and we really want to remove barriers. And so when we started partnerships with Evergreen and YES, that's something that first came up is like, hey, you know, we don't want to be gatekeepers to these amazing services, and how do we work alongside our school counselors and our staff? And a part of it is sort of like a social campaign of like, hey, I'm here, I'm actually designated to your school, and I can help you think through. If you have a student you want to talk to, feel free to come. And then there's a referral process that oftentimes schools go through. The other thing too that's really cool is our students can actually self-refer them. They can go knock on a behavioral health door and say, hey, can I talk to you? I'm having a hard time, or I just want to talk through a couple things. Are you available? And then that's something that we can do. So we want to remove barriers. The other thing too that when we first originally started was sometimes we call it, you know, we're playing in the same sandbox. We have different roles. Something that our community providers will often say is like, hey, I have to wait to get students' information and schedules. We worked really hard to create a NDA so that it allows our clinicians to have access to our students' information. So we didn't need to wait for principal or school counselor to say, hey, here's Johnny's schedule, or here's when you can talk to Johnny, or here's Johnny's information, go talk to his family. It's like, the staff member has access to that information at their fingertips, and then they can just communicate and collaborate and partner with a school around, hey, I'm working with Johnny today, and here's what I'm working on. It's a completely different conversation, whereas before it's like, can I get access to their information? So we've been able to remove that barrier and has increased partnership within the building, specifically with our school admin and school counseling team.
Anyone else? Okay. I had one last question. I know you just announced it this evening, the partnership with CareSolace. So I'm assuming that it hasn't gone out to the schools yet. But I was curious what the communication kind of strategy is for notifying families that they have this tool available.
Yeah, thank you. The first is to announce with you all, and then we have a rolling communication strategy to our school building, our school counselors, as well as our family and community. Through multiple modes of, you know, parent square, as well as we're going to do some social media blitz here and there. We're also going to use some of our partners, City of Redmond and Lake Washington Schools Foundation, to push out some of this communication as well. So we have a 6-week communication plan. So We're going to somewhat inundate our district with communication, as well as working with HR to announce to staff, like, hey, staff, if you need some support in addition to EAP, we got something for you. And then, as well as we'll be putting this on the website. We're going to specifically put it in a place where parents can see and access that. So over the next 6 weeks, you will see more Care Solace around, and I hope you also will be sharing that there's this wonderful opportunity in the district.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we will go ahead and take a 10-minute recess before we dive into our next item on our non-consent agenda. So we will be back at 8:45. Thank you. All right, we are ready to resume our meeting. Tonight, the board will monitor results 3, life and global citizenship skills, one of our 3 results policies. Following,
Director, before we go
Oh,
forward, before I
sorry.
forget, can I, the court, will you entertain an motion?
yes, I will, Director La Liberty.
Thanks. Just to clean up the agenda for tonight, I move that the board amend the agenda for the meeting tonight to table the presentation on facilities and technology services to a later meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Director La Liberty and seconded by Director Stewart to table the third item on our non-consent agenda, the capital projects update for facilities and technology, to a future meeting date. Is there any discussion? Okay. It's the language.
You've got to vote.
Oh, yeah. It has been, All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you so much. We will go ahead and move that to a future date. Going back to results 3, following the presentation for results 3, the board will have an opportunity for questions and for comments. Dr. Holman, will you please present a summary of the monitoring report?
Yeah, I'm excited to share this report with the board and the public this evening. When I saw the data the first time, I thought to myself, am I reading this correctly? And then when it got packaged again, yes, it was more progress than I had anticipated seeing in this area, just given some of the difficulties and struggles. Exactly what Director Fu presented tonight, the number of kids in crisis needing support. And so as the board knows, this is our 3rd year of monitoring results 3 with this updated policy language. And so tonight to present to the board the formal presentation is Deputy Superintendent Gillingham.
All right, thank you, Dr. Holman. It is a pleasure to present results 3 and to the board, and I'm excited to talk about this year, particularly because this is our first year of having trend data, and so that'll be exciting to go and look at what those trends entail. The board engaged in a process back in 21-22 school year in revising results 3 and mapped that policy. You really kind of used the Washington State social emotional learning benchmarks, which were based on the National Social Emotional Learning Framework developed by CASEL, to indicate what types of skills that it hoped to endeavor in our students as we think about them being future ready. And so the life and global citizenship skills that there really do map to this whole child approach. And one of the things that we talked about as the board was going through this process, it's also really aligns with the work that was underway in our schools that we're being really intentional about. You heard from our directors of elementary and secondary learning today a lot of things about the types of environments and the intentional ways in which our educators in the system are attending to the whole child experience and trying to craft learning experiences intentionally for them that match with social emotional learning. So actually, also will show, I did a little bit later, went in and looked at all of our buildings, our schools' SIPs, and map those back against the board's policies. And so you can actually see there's a through line from our policy to the work that our schools are engaged in. And it is beginning to show up in some of the results. And so the policy has six discrete skills. 3 of them are related to the development of self. self-awareness, self-management, and self-efficacy. And 3 of them are socially aligned, so social awareness, management, and engagement. The superintendent has interpreted these, but we'll say, and I'll show in just a second, the interpretations in relationship to the indicators. The interpretations are more broad and holistic than necessarily what we're able to kind of monitor. And so we're making some intentional decisions around kind of either a specific context or a particular element of the skill, and using that as a proxy for kind of the entire interpretation of this policy. One of the things, so we use, as far as indicators against this, we use the Panorama survey, where we have students in grades 3 through 12 self-report how they feel that they're able to demonstrate or experience these particular skills. We worked with Panorama when the board was going through this policy, and as we were figuring out who we'd monitor, we actually said, here's our policy, here are the social emotional learning goals, and which questions would make the most sense and are the most valid for us to be able to use to measure that our students are making progress in these areas. And so so it was a partnership with them to try to pick questions that best aligned with the board's indicators. And some of the questions were ones we were already asking, some of them were ones that we added that were new. And then some, as you'll see, like social management was an interesting one, because when we think about social emotional learning skills, they're highly contextual. And so your ability to demonstrate a skill can change as you grow, and you might move into different grade levels. Navigating a social context looks one way in an elementary classroom, where you're generally with the same 20, 25 kids all day, versus at a secondary level where you're going to be in classrooms with 149 other students throughout the day, right? And you're having more transitions. And so so context matters. We chose, in this sense, the cultural awareness and action, and looking at saying students, their abilities to discuss issues confronting race, ethnicity, and culture. It's one that generally a lot of us are challenged with trying to figure out how to navigate. And so the thinking is, hey, if our students are able to navigate that from a social management, then that's demonstrated a high level of skill there. And we know that that's certainly, there's limitations to this. The board has expressed an interest around indicators in the past of, well, are there other ways for us to measure them? We continue to every year go back, look at this, we connect. We had one of our student services staff members who had a fellowship with Castle. And so constantly looking at kind of the developments in this area. And there's limitations because often it's very observational data. So it's very intensive to kind of gather. And so we're really using this as the satellite data. But know that, again, kind of referring to what our level directors were talking about earlier, is that our schools are engaged in street data work and talking with our students, understanding their experiences. And so as they're doing their work, they're doing it with both informed by satellite data, but then gathering student voice to figure out how do they actually help respond and foster these skills in our students. And then as the board went through this process, we also had to figure out, well, what do we consider success? And the Panorama data has, I will just say, some unique limitations where, depending on the question, 60% favorable could be really, really great. That could be one of the top in the nations, or it could be really, really bad. And so we're using a 90-90 model here. So We want 90% of our students to be either neutral or favorable. The other way to look at that is that that's fewer than 10% of our students that are indicating unfavorable responses. Obviously, we'd like more favorable than neutral, but that's allows us to kind of smooth out, because some questions you're going to be really happy if you get 65% favorable. And to kind of, we also want to compare ourselves across the nation and say, well, we want to be within the 90th percentile of districts, so holding ourselves to really high standards. So I'll present that data in both in terms of kind of favorability rating and then the comparative data. We're also disaggregating the data, and so I'll present that to the boards. We disaggregate it by grade bands and by different groups of students. I already talked a little bit about how it is contextual, and so there's been a lot of work within our school system in thinking about the environment that our students are doing their learning, recognizing that social emotional learning isn't, we can't just teach it in a standalone 20-minute lesson and then never reinforce that, never encourage that, or have students have an opportunity to practice. So over the past few years, as we've really been intentional around doing education with our staff around social emotional learning, it's also been in an integrated sort of context. Our elementary social study, we had a new adoption of elementary social studies, and Associate Superintendent Rose was telling me about the kindergarten lessons the first day, and you couldn't have told the difference between that and the social emotional learning. The students were learning about their communities, and they were learning about in the context of that social awareness and social kind of social engagement. So there was a high level of crossover between the academic content that our students are learning as well as the social emotional skills that we're hoping to foster with them. We also think about, and you heard from Director Fu about some of our behavioral health supports, and so a lot of our interventions and programming, we also have been working to align with this. So comprehensive school counseling program or social emotional learning, positive behavior intervention supports or MTSS, restorative practices, and behavioral supports and affinity spaces. So we're engaged in intentional programming that is aligned to try to support specific areas of the student's skill development. And so now I'll get to some of the highlights. So we have positive trend data, and this is the first year. So we've been monitoring this for 3 years. So instead of looking at year-over-year improvement, we'll actually be able to look at where we've been going for that trend data. We are either maintaining or improving when it comes to our percentile rankings, and we observe progress for most subgroups across multiple policy areas. So in the report that the board has, I don't have this table in the report, and the report's 82 pages, and I find that can be a little bit overwhelming. So I like these next two tables because they really just kind of pull it all together. So this is when we ask students questions about their skills in these areas, what percentage of students respond either favorably or neutrally? And then in the parentheses next to that, that's the 3-year trend data. And if anybody goes back and looks at this presentation from last year, and they notice that that would just be a year-over-year comparison. So you can see that in areas of 3.2 and 3.4, self-management, social awareness, we have met or exceeded the 90% threshold that we were hoping for across all grade bands, and we have positive trend data there. For self-awareness and self-efficacy, we are in the 80%, so we are approaching, but we have positive trend data, particularly at the secondary level. So that's exciting. Social management, may not necessarily be a surprise for anybody that's worked with, I love middle schoolers, but so social management for our middle schoolers, for that to be the lowest response area is it's not unsurprising, but we do have some positive trend data there. And you can see we have some really positive trend data at the high school level for social management and social engagement. And then in context, and I'm going to go back just a second because one of the things that we talked about, how do I go back? Last viewed. When I was looking at this data, I was remembering, and we'd had a lot of conversation around, the board last year had a lot of concerns around self-efficacy, and I was looking at this data and was thinking to myself, well, why are we concerned about self-efficacy at the secondary level? Because, you know, that looks good and is improving, and we're almost to what our goal is. And then I got to this next table, and that reminded me why we were talking about self-efficacy. So you can see self-awareness. Our students across the board are, the way that they're responding puts them within the 90th percentile across the nation. Self-management, 90th percentile, 80th percentile. But self-efficacy, while we're in the 90th percentile at the elementary, this was what was a bit jarring, was what is happening between elementary and the secondary level there. Now, we are seeing some improvement, and you'll see we're at the 60th percentile, so we were improving from the 50th percentile last year. So while the improvement is good, that still is an area of concern. And I'll talk a little bit more about self-efficacy and what, because we've engaged in some learning over the past year to try to respond and understand that. And you'll see at the secondary level for the social management, social engagement, we're still in the same percentile areas, even though those were areas that the neutral favorable responses had positive trend data, and we're moving up. All right, and then one of the things that is really exciting, I think that makes this policy particularly powerful, is it is aligned with state and national standards. So there's a framework that that educators are used to using, seeing, can associate. There's a deep body of research behind it. And the data that the board is looking at, the satellite data that the board is looking at, is the same satellite data that our schools are looking at. So they are attending to the things that you're attending to. And in our school improvement plans, while they have a literature or a language goal and a mathematics goal, schools also have a third goal that they identify, and the vast majority of them are social emotional learning goals. And you can see here, we went in and looked to say, well, how are they writing those goals? Well, one school wrote a goal around self-awareness, and that might be completely appropriate for their context, but when we looked at self-awareness based on our data, the vast majority of our students, that's our highest area. So self-efficacy, 4 of our secondary schools have identified that as a goal area, and 3 of our elementary schools did. Self-management, much higher at the elementary level, which developmentally seems really appropriate, and that's an area where we're doing well in. And then you can see sense of belonging, and now sense of belonging is not called out in this policy. We don't monitor in this policy, but we do monitor it in OE10 and OE14. And so this, I chose to include it here because it's part of the context in which students apply their skills. And so, so for 18 of our schools, they weren't necessarily focused on a particular social emotional learning goal, but what they were looking at is what's our context, and do our students feel connected to that context? And so there's this inherent relationship between the two. And so I didn't want to call it out and bring it into it because I think that it'd be really difficult for us to successfully develop kind of a whole child if they don't feel connected to their teachers, to their peers, and to the school community. So So it's really exciting to look at this. There were only a handful of goals that weren't related to these areas. Couple, attendance or MTSS implementation, but this represents probably 90% of our school improvement plan goals that are directly related to board policies. All right, so I'm just going to briefly, the board has these in their report, but I do want to share publicly the disaggregated data. I know that that's a value of the board for us to be looking at this. And so I'll just kind of put up each table here, talk about it briefly. So this is emotional regulation, 3.1. This is, you're looking at our elementary students, grades 3 through 5. They take this, and you can see that 90th percentile overall and 84% neutral or favorable. And you can also see some variation that we have some groups of students receiving special education, indicating the least favorable responses there, with fairly moderate trend data for that group, as well as students for low-income household. Our Black African American students a little bit lower than average, but very positive trend data there. This is our middle school students. And you can see a little bit different subgrouping, students receiving special education, lower than the average there, Native Hawaiian, and students indicating gender X. We have a different trend data for our Black African American students at the middle level. That's interesting, and it's a different context. So, and then at the high school, different trend data for our Black African American students there. So that may be one thing we watch over time to see if that's something either particular to the grade bands or if that smooths out in some ways. You can also pull out gender X and students receiving special education services for emotional regulation. Self-management, largely green and consistent. Here at the elementary level, fairly similar at the middle level, and at the high school level. Self-efficacy. So this was an area of conversation. I talk here briefly while we're displaying this. So trying to understand self-efficacy, we met as a team following this report last year. And we had more wonderings than we had answers. How much of this is related to the context? Because when we look at, the context of what are our high school students telling us about their experience, how much of it is it comparative? How much is something that actually might be a skill? How much of it might be that our students are really skilled, but there's a sense of overwhelm, and that kind of suppresses their sense of self-efficacy. So we had our team engaged with CASEL and also connected locally with the Committee for Children. They're the authors of Second Step. They're based here in Seattle, and we're talking with them about we're trying to unpack how do we engage around student self-efficacy. And the Committee for Children, interestingly, were engaged in the same learning, and they have partnered with the Department of Education to do some work at the middle level. And so we are in the early stages of partnering with them to engage in that work, to explore professional learning and some curricular resources at the middle level. And I know I'm not showing you the middle level data here as I'm talking about that. So it's really, really early days. We're trying to identify at the stage where we're trying to identify some teachers that want to engage in that work. You heard Director Fu talk about all the partnerships that we bring in, and we're really fortunate, one, to be in an area with the University of Washington Smart Center Committee for Children, being locally, having created connections with CASEL, where this is not work that we're doing alone. And we're tapping into folks who have the time and the energy and the expertise to help inform the way in which we do this work. So self-efficacy, you can see here at the elementary level, we have some variation, kind of similar to what we saw in 3.1. Much greater variation as we move into the middle level. And you can see that the percentile favorability drops, and similar variation at the secondary level. Social awareness is one where at the elementary level is fairly high, and we have 3 different student groups that aren't quite at the 90%, but they're not too far off from that, and they all have positive trends. Data. Middle level is also, we have a lot of student groups that are approaching, and they all have positive trend data when it comes to social awareness, and same at the high school level. Social management. Now, for 3.5 and 3.6, these are not questions that are available at the elementary level.
Matt,
Sorry, we
real
have a
quick.
question? You want me to go back?
For social awareness, we're scoring quite high in the 90th percentile for all the age groups, but the national favorable percentile is so low. Can you explain that?
So I was just wondering the same thing as I was looking at that
Yeah.
again. Yeah, I will have to ask Panorama. And again, my guess, I'll just say my hypothesis is that this is one of those where there is a very minor difference between, these different, the national percentile bands, right? So that distribution is probably fairly low. And this is one where there's, that could be part of it. The other part of it is when we're looking at here, and I'd have to pull up the raw data, we're looking at neutral and favorable, whereas the percentile is favorable. So while we're 94%, that could be 60% favorable, 34% neutral. So it's that the favorability distribution. That's what is accounting for it. So that's a better answer than the first one I gave you. So that actually makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
And part of our work would be over time, right, to try to help create experiences that more students are responding favorably. So we may not be able to move this 94% overall much moving forward. What we can do is look at how many students are responding favorably versus neutrally, and then work to create conditions in which they're feeling more confident and therefore able to respond more favorably.
I think at some point in the future, it might be helpful to discuss Panorama's kind of methodology in terms of their scoring. I find it interesting that there's such a variability between their questions and kind of their percentile ratings. It makes me curious about the data and the validity of the data. Just from a lack of information, I think I would like some more information around the survey potentially. Because if we're going to use it as an indicator, as one of our indicators, scoring in the 90th percentile, I think a better understanding of kind of how this number is arrived at would make more sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and that would apply, we use Panorama data in, I believe, at least 3, actually, we probably use it in more because we use staff and family and a couple of others. So we use it in multiple board policies. So. All right. Okay, so social management for 3.5 and 3.6, those are only questions that are available at the secondary level. Now, and here I'll say at the middle level, we have an overall positive trend data on this, and same at the high school level. And at social engagement, similarly, positive trend data overall. And even more so at the high school level. Actually, I already talked about this, so just kind of continue to come back is we have positive trend data across the board and are improving in some of those areas that were of concern. Continue to have work to go, and we are seeing progress within our subgroups. But still have work to go there.
Matt, one thing I noticed as we were going through this, and I should have caught it in the report, the 6-8 emotional regulation.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to go back and check the data, because the overall is a positive trend. All of the categories of race, ethnicity show a negative trend, but then all of the other data has a positive trend. So
okay,
it's not possible to have the whole population, race, ethnicity, have a negative trend, and then the rest of the.
Which one were you saying again?
It's 6-8 emotional regulation.
6-8 emotional regulation.
Is that 3?
That's 3 emotion. So that's 3.1. For 6-8.
Yeah, there's a 2.5 overall positive trend.
Yeah.
All the race, ethnicity are reported as a negative trend. So I just,
one of those,
something's off.
Something's off there.
So then when you look at like ML services, we have 3 categories that describe 100% of students. They're all positive, low income. So
yeah, something
just
in
something
that,
there
and it's
that-
just in that the race ethnicity category, because the trend data, when I'm looking at the other categories, so whether it's income or ML students or special education services, are all positive. So yeah, something in the race ethnicity is not right in that one. Sorry, I didn't catch that earlier.
Okay, thank you for that update. Are there any questions or clarifications in regard to the information presented for our 3 from the board? Director Yocum?
Okay. I want to clarify the social management. Is that 3.5? Where I believe it says I think the definition was making safe choices about personal behavior and social interactions. Just confirming that the panorama questions around social management are the ones that were focused on cultural awareness. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
So that's the only one. Okay, and then question, when you talked about there were SIP goal areas for secondary self-management, were those SIP goals only focused on cultural awareness, or was it some other element of self-management? Does that make sense?
Just give me a second and I'll look them up.
You don't have to look them now.
I have them.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I just need a moment to look it up.
Well, I'm impressed. Thank you. Give me a Jeopardy song.
Okay, so we're looking at self-management. Was that self-management?
Sorry, yes.
Okay.
I was just curious of the SIP goals, if they match that cultural awareness or if it was something completely separate.
Oh, no, that's, sorry, that's social management.
Social management, sorry, that's what I meant. Too many.
Sorry, my fat fingers are.
Can I ask another question while you're waiting?
They, so actually, social management was not, so we had, so as far as the goal areas, I probably could have just done this faster this way. It was self-management that,
Thank
so the
you.
schools had goals
Sorry.
around that, not social management.
Sorry, I made you look there. And then, can I ask one more really quickly? I think it was what President Choi just caught. Are we comparing our favorable and neutral numbers to national numbers that are just favorable? Is
Yeah,
that
so,
what that's?
So that is a little bit of the trick in what we're looking at, and it, so when it picked the indicators, so the percentile rankings only looks at favorable. So the way the panorama system is that they will give us a percentile against other school districts' favorable responses. So the questions are using a Likert scale. There's 5 questions. 2 of them are considered, negative or suboptimal. 1 of them is neutral, and then 2 of them are considered favorable. So they're, the like great and super great.
So
and the 2 favorable ones are what gets used for the percentile comparison. We chose to include the neutral because for the board, that's one of the things I was telling you is essentially the percent of students that are reporting that they essentially aren't feeling particularly skilled, that they don't have those skills, and that at a kind of this global satellite level, we want to that tells us, how many students are essentially not getting there. And the questions, and I think this is what President Choi was kind of getting at, is one of the things when we looked at is what could put you in the 90th percentile as far as favorable responses varies based on the question being asked. So one set of questions, you have a 64% favorable rating, that might put you in the 90th percentile. That would be a very high level of response. Another set of questions, 64%, might have you in the 60th percentile. And they're all benchmarked questions. They're, and so they're a research firm, they validate it. So I can't tell you why there's not this consistency. You would think like 80% or something across the board. That's not the way that works. And so it is, and it even took me a second to kind of remember like why that doesn't make sense. Why when we're like 90% or 93%, neutral favorable, and yet we have a lower than desired percentile. It's because we would have probably more neutral responses in that group.
Got it. Sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Guthrie.
I have a question on response rates, which is in the appendix of the report. And there's some interesting patterns there where some of the student subgroups who were most focused on also have lower response rates, such as multilingual learners, students on IEPs. I know we talked last year wondering about access. I was really happy that my student who receives reading services on her IEP came home and said that she was able to take Panorama basically by using text-to-speech. So having that accommodation built in was really important for her to be able to access and have her voice heard here. I'm curious, 2 questions. Is there language translation functionality as well? Do you know? And do we know if students are declining to take the survey versus not having the not even being given the opportunity to access that?
So I think there's a number of things with response rates. So let's talk first about kind of like what are we structurally doing, some of the structural things that we're doing, which you've already mentioned some of the problem statements. So the survey is translatable. I can't remember how many languages, 20-plus languages that it's translatable. We also have, at least I know we did at the elementary level, also worked to do some vocabulary work because as elementary students are accessing this, that's something typically that our teachers will do. If like, here are some new words that you're going to be exposed to, and so particularly thinking for our ML learners, but it's a great strategy for all learners. And so those are some things that on a language access that we've worked with Panorama and around the as far as who has the opportunity to take this. There's a couple of dependencies. One is ensuring that our schools are actually creating the space for doing this. Our use of Panorama actually grew out of, it was programmatic. So it's kind of been this grassroots thing that as we went to do this policy and some other policies, we were looking at, well, what data is already in our system? And essentially kind of co-opted that a little bit, right? Like, so our school counselors were the first group of, elementary school counselors were the first group of educators to use this data. And so that was really kind of largely driven by them because we wanted to help them say, well, how are you making programmatic decisions and how do you understand what your students are experiencing so that you can figure out what to deliver for them. What we noticed as we started to then kind of, use this as a policy is we didn't have consistent necessarily implementation of even, schools fully partaking in it. And some of that makes sense because it was kind of programmatic and where it came from. Johnny and his team, Director Fu and his team have been really monitoring response rates. We've clear about like, hey, here's when the survey window is. You need to have a plan, create opportunity, and we've followed up. There are some times where the school doesn't partake, and we're like, that's not appropriate. We need you to take this. One, we think it's a valuable tool for you to use with your students, and we can see, I just happen to have our SIP plans. Our schools are using this data as part of their planning. But Director Fu and his team are following up of saying, hey, we haven't seen anybody taking this yet, kind of, what's your plan? You sure you've got something on it? And then working with our directors of elementary or secondary education when we see, every once in a while we have a school that didn't participate at the level that we'd like, and then saying, so they need to have a plan and you please provide us with assurances that they're going to complete this. The other thing is about then which students in that school are having the opportunity. And I think this comes right back to a lot of the work that we're doing around creating inclusive learning environments because, it'd be really easy to say, it's like, well, we're delivering this in this class, and when we have, a special education course or, pull-out multilingual course, that those students aren't even there. To have that opportunity. And so as we do more of that work and our students are in their general education setting, we'd expect that we'll see that. And we still have students for whom, whether they have different accommodations, that we'll have to figure out that either how to kind of adapt this experience to try to get at that. And our schools, I think the other thing is, and this gives us satellite data, and our schools are using kind of that street data to, engage with students. So you can, I believe I can't remember which director earlier talked about, actually meeting with students in that through line and kind of meeting with the same subgroup of students, which is, and that corresponds with a targeted kind of population that school's trying to attend to. So. When we look at response rates broadly, we have very high response rates at the elementary and middle level. They're really great about kind of complying. If they're asked to do it, they're gonna participate. The high school level, generally we're pretty happy with something around the 50%. We have a couple of comprehensive high schools that push in the 60%, but it's for surveys, it's hard to get much higher than that. So what we're really focused with the high schools is there a structural opportunity that students have to take that? if 50% of our high school students are taking this, that gives us pretty good, pretty good data to work with.
Do you know if the high school data skews 9th, 10th?
That's a good question. I do not, because it's not broken.
By grade?
Well, I could probably, I'd have to look at that.
Just a
I might need more than a few seconds. up
Yeah,
here in
no
front of me,
worries.
but-
You can get back to me at a future date. I'm just kind of curious, because if it was, because we're looking at about a 48% response rate, and there were a couple areas where you saw some similarities between the 6-8 data and the 9-12 data, and a pretty big difference in 3-5. I'm just curious if if it's skewed toward 9-10. I'm wondering if it says something about like transitions more than middle versus high school versus elementary school. Just curious.
We'd have to, I don't know that I can get it broken out on the dashboard by grade level, and it's thinking right now, but that would be my assumption. So like when we look at response rate, so the parallel, the Healthy Youth Survey, we survey at different grades, and the response rate for our 10th graders is significantly higher than the response rate for our seniors. And so I would assume that our Panorama response rates are somewhat similar. Our younger high school students are more likely to respond than our older high school students.
Suniri?
I just wanted to say, like, as a high school student, I don't think we really know, like, the implications of this data or what it really supports that much. You know, usually we just get, like, a little spiel at the beginning where it's like, oh, the school district wants you to fill this out, and then people use it as a time to go on their phones and stuff, and then we don't ever really see the results of this data. So maybe if, we were told, or, like, it was explained to us more that this data is actually, like, I think one of the only, or just one of the major factors for what services are provided, and that, like, kind of it's stressed more, like, where this data goes, and we do get to see some of the results rather than just on the board meeting, then we might have more engagement at the high school level.
Okay, I think that's totally fair, and it gets used, your counseling team for sure is looking at it and thinking about they're designing their supports at the school level around it. I guess as we work to implement some new policies around cell phones, this will be a more attractive alternative because you won't have anything else to do, right, during that time.
Yeah, I think, like, at least my conception of this before I was, like, exposed to all this is that we just do this, and then maybe at the end of the year it's put in some report for some of the staff, but I wasn't really informed that this had, like, actual implications for the services provided to the schools. So I was just thinking maybe if we informed students of that more, they would be more willing to take a active, like, role in filling out the form.
That's great, thank you.
I think you just volunteered for a PSA for our students potentially, Suniri.
How about gift cards?
Are there any more questions? Okay. Hearing no more questions, thank you, Dr. Holman, and thank you, Matt, for the overview and the clarifications. Now it is the board's responsibility to consider the report and data as evidence of reasonable progress with noted exceptions in this results area. I will now entertain a motion to approve the monitoring report as presented.
So moved. Second.
It has been moved by Director Stewart and seconded by Director LaLiberty to approve the monitoring report for results 3. Are there any points for discussion? Yes, Director Guthrie.
Yes, first of all, thank you for all the work that goes into this. There's a ton of data here, and being able to understand our students' results, not just from an academic perspective, but from an emotional health perspective, or prioritizing that from just as highly as our academic results is always great to see. I've got 2 comments. One is that I don't see highly capable students broken out as a subgroup here, and as the K-8 Highly Capable Committee continues its work, I would love to hear from those experts in terms of what we should be looking at for our highly capable students when it comes to emotional health. Not necessarily something, I guess, just to explore that. I'm not saying that we would need to monitor that or that that should be added today, but that I think is an interest to look at that group of students who may have some unique challenges in that area. Who knows? And also for the 3.5 social management piece that kind of gets translated into cultural awareness and action, a lot of the questions, when you look at the actual questions, they really focus on race. There's the first two mention race, ethnicity, and culture, but then the rest are only talking about race. And so, for example, when kids are asked, how well does your school help students speak out against racism? I wonder whether this truly translates to how much students speak out against other isms. So we've had a lot of conversation, a lot of energy in this room over the last year about anti-Semitism, about Islamophobia, classism, and ableism. Whether our students, I know we're using that as sort of a proxy for our students to be able to speak out against everything, but I don't know if the current questions are really capturing that. So knowing what the board's values are around that, I would really like to explore not to measure those things differently, but to whether there are more questions that we could add that could explore some of those other areas, rather than kind of assuming, well, if they can speak up against racism, then they're also going to speak up against ableism, for example. So those are my comments. Thank you again.
Thank you. Director Yoakum?
Yeah, I will kind of piggyback off of that because that's very similar to what my question or discussion that I wanted to have with the board. I know that it's a lengthy survey already, but I do know that that 3.5 focuses on that social management with the focus on race and culture and ethnicity. I wonder if we can see if Panorama has questions focused specifically on ability. I don't know, you named a lot more, but I was looking at that mostly because if we begin to focus more on secondary inclusion, I wonder if this is a good time to add ability questions to our social management indicator, especially because that is mostly at the secondary level that we're measuring that. So almost like a subcomponent of 3.5. And do we have that cultural awareness? Do we potentially add ability awareness?
Director La Liberty.
I agree with Director Guthrie and Director Yoakum on their comments on 3.5. I think it's, I'd like to see whether there's the ability to add, broaden the scope of the questions that are asked for 3.5 for social management. I just wanted to, I appreciate it was highlighted in the report, but I also just wanted to add my comment that self-efficacy for our secondary students remains, I appreciate the positive trend, remains, and I think it should remain an area of focus for the district. It will remain an area of interest for me as I look at future monitoring reports. But overall, it's pretty neat to see progress, like real progress in all of these areas. Looking at this monitoring report, and it remains very also neat to just have a cohesive policy for R3 now, which we did not have for quite a long time. So those are my comments, and I appreciate the presentation.
Anyone else? Okay. Yes, Dr. Holman.
My comment is in support of the board's work here. The current indicator that the board has for 3.5 states that % of students reporting positively as to their preparedness for discussing and confronting issues of race, ethnicity, and culture in school on the Panorama Cultural Awareness and Action Survey. And so I think what I'm hearing the board say is possibly adding to that indicator or adding a subsequent indicator. And so versus just adding questions to kind of backfill the current indicator, it sounds like there's a new indicator that the board would like work to be done around. So as you're thinking about your follow-up with direction for the superintendent.
Potential modification of the indicator.
I
Director
took
Liberty.
down in my notes for this that everyone
Yes.
nodded their head.
Everyone nodded,
So
yes.
I will be working on to the report.
Yes,
Okay.
sounds good. I will echo Director La Liberty's sentiment. It's exciting to be able to collect 3 years of data and to see, being able to see somewhat of a trend data show through and kind of put a little bit more meaning into results 3. I appreciate the difficulty of trying to monitor R3. I will stay on the same topic that I've said from the beginning, I think, which is I have an interest in having more than just satellite data to monitor this report. I think it's great that we have Panorama and that we're able to survey our students, but it is a self-reported, elected survey opportunity. We are missing a subset of the population where we don't really know what their experience is. And so I have an interest in continuing to try to explore different ways of measuring compliance with this report, appreciating that that is difficult. And no, I don't have any suggestions.
Do you want me to offer a suggestion? I'm wondering if, rather than finding kind of street-level data for all 6 areas, if there's one that's a focus area for the board, then staff could take that one area and bring back a report type thing like we've done in OE14. Like, there's some different ways we can do that. But it probably makes more sense to focus on an individual area that the board has expressed interest in. Probably one of the areas that we're seeing the lowest overall percentile success that our students are reporting. So that would be my suggestion if we want to go in that direction, knowing that to produce a report that's based on street data, that's based on student engagement and interaction, that's a heavy lift, albeit a very important lift. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. If I were to select one for this, maybe the next round of monitoring, it would be, I have an interest in exploring the self-efficacy component for secondary, since it was 2 years in a row where we've kind of noticed that weird dip. Personal opinion. I see thumbs up and nods. Okay, any other points of discussion? Director Guthrie.
Sorry, can I just clarify back on 3.5 to what I nodded my head to? So the current interpretation does talk about the ability to engage in respectful and healthy relationships with individuals of diverse perspectives, cultures, language, history, identity, and ability. The current indicator does specify race, ethnicity, and culture on Panorama. Are we saying to add another indicator under 3.5? Or to add a separate, like, then we would have a 3.7?
I believe it's social management, looking at 2 aspects of social management. One, the race, ethnicity, and culture. The other, I believe, is related to ableism.
Yes, okay, excellent. Yes, I am, again, nodding my head to that. Thank you.
Yes, Director Stewart.
When we add the ableism, though, as Matt was mentioning, the idea of having to use vocabulary, if you will, introduction to the elementary, I'm not sure that most secondary students probably have ableism in their vocabulary. I could be wrong, but I'm...
Yeah, and so...
it just needs a definition for them. If you
Absolutely, and that probably would never even be part of the question bank. It's, there's, I think the first step would be to reach out to Panorama to find out what questions have they developed already that have gone through their testing and all of that. And they work pretty diligently to to your point, use terminology, phrases, and language that is knowledgeable of the age group, because the questions are different elementary to high school as well.
I'm not sure most of the public could tell you what ableism is, to be quite frank.
Anything else? All right. It has been moved by Director Stewart and seconded by Director Liberty to approve the monitoring report for results 3. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Holman. Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Gillingham and Director Fu. Next on our agenda this evening is the superintendent report. Dr. Holman.
Okay, I have a few slides I want to share with you. I'll upload them afterwards so you can see them as well, so I won't spend too much time. I wanted to share some work that we did as a district over the summer related to preparations related to school safety. We don't talk about it very often, but I really appreciate the work and the thinking that has gone into our preparedness, emergency preparedness and whatnot, because it's really fundamental to our schools being able to operate and respond when crisis situations occur. I dug into our policy, the board's policies. The board expects that our staff are trained and prepared. They expect our learning environments to be safe, and that means a few different types of safety. At this moment, really referring to that physical safety. And then in OE 14, you call out both student safety, but you also in 14.2 call out staff safety. And so it truly is an expectation of the board that we're continually looking at and monitoring our practices related to safety. Oh, wow, I even highlighted it for you. And yeah, fancy. You have seen our layered security, school safety, and our safety approach recognizes that no single barrier or intervention is sufficient by itself to maintain a safe campus. Rather, using multi-layers act like a filter to be able to identify, resolve, and mitigate threats. Tonight, related to some of the drills and preparedness, it touches on a number of these layers. Safety management, when we think about our building safety committees, our internal safety, our school safety, and classroom safety. Those three really do go hand in hand when you think about responding. And then well-being. Are we being thoughtful about how we're addressing drills, emergency response, and you're going to hear a lot about community partnership in this, because just like our behavioral health presentation, we can't do this alone. We don't do this in isolation. And so 2 summers ago, President Choi attended our safety forum, and I believe I probably forgot to invite one of our board members to our safety forum this year. And this year was as good, if not better, than the prior year, because this was our second year in holding a safety forum during the summer where a representative from each of our schools attends to participate for a day in training. And you can see this person sitting right in the back, that's me. I don't know if you noticed that. And so I joined the team for part of the morning at the safety forum. It was held at Overlake Christian Church. They have a good training space that we've used a number of times. It's put on by our Risk and Safety Services Department. About 75 district leaders participated in this. Again, a representative from each of our school, and a few of our schools had multiple leaders and or deans of students there. Brought in Susie Kroll, King County Sheriffs, to talk about the safety of resiliency, emphasizing wellness for school staff. And she just had a unique perspective on the idea of resiliency actually leads to health and well-being for staff. You can see for our safety forum, it included police, fire, emergency management partners from all 3 of our cities. We had specific breakout sessions, one focused on threat assessment, a protocol that it's a multidisciplinary team, but our schools need to know and understand what does it mean, what's their role in that. Supporting our schools in conducting appropriate, valid investigations because they are asked to step in and document information both on a student and staff level, and then ensuring that our building safety committees are up and running. That's in compliance with the law. That every one of our sites has a building level safety committee to digest information that's sent to our schools, to be able to address issues that are brought forward from staff at that building level. And then we conducted a reunification exercise because when we think about the need to ensure that in a crisis moment that we have practiced those strategies and skills for all types of emergencies. And so my definition, not Risk and Safety's definition of reunification, is the safe and efficient delivery of students to caretakers when regular dismissal is not able to be implemented. This can occur at a school site, or it can occur at an alternative site. And so as we know that in this area, the one thing we probably really need to be thoughtful of is earthquakes. And if an earthquake were to cause one of our schools to go offline or multiple schools, we need to be prepared for that. And reunification with caretakers is an important aspect to that. And so we had a team, representatives from all of our schools. I believe the number on this day was, and it might be on the next slide, 65 district leaders came together to participate in a reunification activity, to learn about it, to understand it, and then to go ahead and practice that. You can see here, we had 15 regional partners participating in this drill with us. They provided feedback and experiences to improve the district safety and well-being initiative and for students and staff. And so the morning session training was led by Raptor Technologies. And I don't know if you've ever been in the room when a Raptor alert has gone to staff, but my whole team, their phones light up, and I mean sound-wise, when an official, either a drill or an emergency takes place. And these are emergencies that are at different levels. Wild animal on campus, a drill, a fire on campus. Like, all of these things go through our Raptor system. And so we partnered with Raptor Technologies on the emergency management platform to also train for this as well. So again, 65 leaders participated. It was a hands-on experience with the system for drill management, emergency alerts, and the reunification process. And then the afternoon session was, as you can see here, 2 detailed drills conducted by our Risk and Safety Services team with support from Raptor. It simulated real-life scenarios to apply what they went through in the morning. And Scott wrote this up as well. He said, Risk and Safety is building the equipment and supplies to provide central support for reunification. Specifically, a mobile Wi-Fi unit is on its way to support that effort. We also have a central mobile reunification plan, team, and supplies to support schools when the need arises. We are partnering with schools throughout this year to adopt this new plan and support them in building their school-specific plans in writing. And so in a nutshell, what that means is we've learned a few lessons along the way, primarily when there was a concern that there was a gas leak at one of our middle schools, and it wasn't, it was exhaust from a backed up, HVAC system. But we thought there was a possibility of a gas leak. We had to reunify at the local high school. And there wasn't this level of detail in place. And so, yes, all the students were safe, all the staff were safe, all the students got reunified, and there were some bumps along the way. The intent is to allow our school leaders and staff to manage students, to address student needs, to address staff needs, so that then we have a central team that comes and provides a uniform process for reunification, as opposed to every school site coming up with their own plan and trying to staff it in the middle of a crisis. And so I share this with you because this is all information that we hope we never have to use, but we know that it's important. We've had fires at schools. I remember most of us were at graduation when Rockwell Elementary had a fire on the pipeline right behind it. We had to evacuate every student from that school, take them to Redmond Middle School and do reunification. So it happens for a variety of reasons, and appreciate all of the time and energy and the partnerships that are going in to make this possible for our schools. So thought I'd share that with you because it's really important. School safety is top of mind when we see occurrences that we saw last week in Georgia at a local high school, and so our partnerships are really, really important. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda this evening is school visits and community fairs updates. This portion of the business meeting is an opportunity for any board members to inform and provide updates from school visits or from organizations or groups that they engage with on behalf of LWSD. Do we have any updates from the board this evening? I know that we had 3 board members who were able to participate in first day of school visits. I unfortunately missed all of them because I got sick. Very sad. But I hope everyone enjoyed their times and are excited for the school year to begin. Other than that, I don't think there are any other updates this evening. Director Yoakum?
I just wanted to also say that I filled in for you at the Lake Washington PTSA. Just very quick welcome to Lake Washington PTSA leaders and just thanking them for the work they do in our community. And then I attended my first ever Lake Washington football game with Redmond High School. So that was really exciting to go and see that. I haven't been to a football game since I was in high school. So hopefully I can make more of those.
Thank you. We can move on to review of future board business. The board plans to meet next on October 7th at the 5 p.m. study session and a 7 p.m. board meeting. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the September 9th, 2024 board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Yoakum that we adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The meeting is adjourned at 9:59 p.m. Thank you.